So in my drought away from YouTube, I had a pretty standard goal. I wanted to hide my face. So I made a mask. And I was pretty happy with how it came out. But because imposter syndrome is real, I wanted to ensure this wasn't a happy accident. 5 attempts later, I feel good enough to try to show you how I did it. Oh, and I'm back. Cue the intro? Inside my mind. Allow me to introduce everyone to today's star of the show, moldable foam clay. Glaring spelling error aside, this product is growing to be my absolute favorite currently to utilize. But before we get started, we do have to focus on today's prep work. For today, I take the thickest armature wire currently available from Michaels and form a shape around the outside of my head. What I'm hoping to do with this is make sure I have a good foundation where it's fitting right below my hairline and right underneath my jaw. Once I'm comfortable with the shape that I currently have, I will take a piece of masking tape to hold it temporarily together, and then I will secure it with thinner armature wire. And then once I have this completed, I'm going to reposition it around my head just to ensure it fits snugly, but it's not suffocating. My goal with this armature is to make sure it fits right below my hairline, and it also covers right along the sides of my really borderline, sometimes pathetic sideburns. Once I'm satisfied with the outline, I'll use a piece of thinner armature wire to form a symmetrical outline at the top of my head to mirror the head and bridge of my nose for positioning. Then it's time to bulk out the shape using the greatest sculpting product going today, aluminum foil. With shaping out the mask, the thought process involved is in the same vein as bulking out a customary sculpture. My end goal is not only to match the shape of the mask I'm hoping to create, but also, in tandem, limit the amount of clay that I'll be needing to use, as you'll see this next series of shots. And no, I am not attempting to cosplay a pre-Nation of Domination Farouk, and I hope WWE does not see this video and try to claim my video. Please and thank you. These next few moments you're going to see my process, which in my opinion is the most critical and important. I'm going to be adding foil, testing it on my head, making the necessary adjustments, and then setting the final shape and positioning of the eyes with thinner wire, and then repeating the previous steps above until the desired outcome is there. Enjoy! And with that embarrassing moment completely logged in my head forever, it's time to go on to the next steps. I am completely over the moon with the shape of this mask, and being somewhat transparent, I'm shocked that this is working since I kinda came up with this process on my own. With that said though, I'm going to seal everything in with a final layer of foil, make some holes to breathe as you just saw in the shot, take a few moments to marvel at my concoction, and then we're on to the star of the show today, which is the foam clay. For those not familiar with foam or similar air drying clays, a point of emphasis I'd like to offer is time is generally not an ally, and you want to be cognizant of the time and maximize every moment that you can. This is very different than polymer clay, where you can leave it for a few days and not have to worry about the clay cracking or becoming brittle. This is very time sensitive. As you just saw, before I even applied any clay to the armature, I did a light misting with water, not overly saturating it, and then I'm applying a very thin layer, or as thin as I can, and spreading it over the armature. As most may know, with air drying clays, they are very different than polymer clays, especially during the drying or the curing process. They will shrink, but I found with the mask that I've made, during the drying process, if I have it done correctly, the foam will actually adhere to the armature, and with some other components that I apply later on, I won't have to worry about any cracking or it losing their shape. Any areas where there could be a large amount of bulking, specifically on the first layer, there could be cracking involved that could be concerning, but I'll showcase how you can handle those later. As you are seeing in the video now, once I do have my first layer applied, I'm taking the time to put on the final detailings and we can get on to the next areas. Believe it or not, before I started making these masks, even now, I really don't have an expectation or a hope on how the mask is going to turn out, but I have more of a general rough idea. For this mask in particular, my first and only goal is to have an Evil Snowman type of mask made, to go with the story that I'm going to hopefully share with you all here in the very near future. Stay tuned. I say all that to say not to be overly concerned on the smaller details and nuances. Go ahead and just take it one layer at a time. Just make sure the first step is your framing is completely correct and it's shaped the way that you want it to. Then once you have the base layer down, go ahead and move on to the next step and get into the nuances. That's where the fun time comes in. I say all that to say also, if you're watching my video and you believe that this process of making this is not for you, that is completely okay. This one may not be for you. There are several other ways to make a mask as well. Another option is if you wanted to use EVA foam. There's a channel on YouTube which is called Much Props. It's ran by Thomas Hanna. He utilizes EVA foam for an overtly a large amount of his mask making. I say all that to say, this is the process that I'm comfortable with and it works for myself and my way of creating. But it might not be the right for you. The point is, find your way and have a lot of fun with it. It's okay. Express yourself. Be awesome. Okay, makeshift pep talk is done. Once we get through the final details with the nose, I took this toothpick Scott Hall threw at me a few years ago and added some extra details to the nose. And then about 4 hours later, we are left with this. What do you guys think so far? Let me know in the comments. So what would an Evil Snowman mask be without some buttons? I apply a few pieces of clay on opposite sides of the mouth and push varied sizes in, then poke holes through each one to allow them to sit appropriately. I then allow myself a few seconds to battle my imposter syndrome before realizing we still have to put clay on the back of the mask and let this dry overnight. Next morning, everything looks amazing, but I will call out a few things that I referenced earlier. Near the bottom of the mask on the back, I do have a few hairline and larger cracks on the back of the mask, which if this happens, do not feel like a failure. That's my job. Instead, do this. Spray it with water, rub it in, and then take some thinner pieces of clay and push it in. Wait 2 hours, and then you're good to go to the next step. The entire mask will get 2 coats of plastic dip, which is a flexible protective rubber coating. Most professionals use this to seal foam and avoid deterioration with most common spray paints. However, for my purposes, I'm using it as another barrier to fully seal the foam in once it's dried and prevent it from becoming brittle or losing its shape. When using this product, spray it evenly, allow it to dry for an hour, and then apply additional coats as desired. But do not spray it inside. Spray it in a well-ventilated area and use a respirator. This stuff has a really bad odor. So once it's fully dried and the odor has subsided, we're going to move on to paint in a few moments. I was actually given a really good idea that I'm going to follow through on from a fellow crafter friend of mine. He actually suggested to put some stitching on the lips, so we are definitely going to do that. To do that today, I'm going to be using some jute cord, but first we got to drill some holes in.
They ask you how you are, you just have to say that you're fine when you're not really fine, but you just can't get into it because they would never understand.
I meant stab some holes in. I don't want to linger on this portion for too long because this is going to be as close as a needle felt video you may ever see on this channel. As I take my sculpting tool with a super sharp end and I push the jute cord in, crossing the lips over and over. This part took me such a long time. I am not an expert with needle felting. For all my needle felt enthusiasts, I envy all of you. I couldn't imagine doing this for super long periods, but I'm actually glad I did it because this gave this a much needed effect that I was hoping for, and it did help that I was listening to Nonstop Slipknot on the way over to doing this mask, so it gave me a little bit of an extra boost. But it did take a super long time, but patience is key. Patience is so key. I had some artificial twigs left over from my Mad Mary video, and I thought they would serve me well to add to the creep factor on today's mask. So I stabbed some holes in varied areas that worked visually and aesthetically, added a few drops of glue, and then pushed them in and let them dry. The glue that I used does dry within nanoseconds, and it is 100% safe for the foam clay that I'm utilizing. In the future, make sure you are cautious of this, and always follow product guidelines as well. With everything good to go, we can put the glove on, and it's time to paint. I start by spraying a tinted gray with a dash of blue all across the front of the mask, allowing some recessed areas to still have the darker color show through, and I'll also spray the same color across the branches for some dimensional purposes. Once I'm satisfied with the coverage, I then shift and darken the lips and outer rim of the mask with the standard black, careful not to hit the stitching if I can avoid it. I then darken the eyes to a very respectable, this dude got massive issues and therapy and society probably failed him equally, before applying an adequately thin misting across the front to darken the mask and also the branches, solely to tint the brighter color and help with the creepy horror aesthetic that I'm aiming for. I bring some of the lightness back with titanium white across the head and very tips of the branches. I don't go overboard with this, I just apply it in certain areas that I deem appropriate. Next, we swivel and paint his awkwardly curved nose of hate flame orange, following the same process as before, allowing the dark underlayer to come through and remain visible in certain areas. I thought I had an amazing idea by adding blue to the mask to make it look very cold. I then realized I kinda hated it, so off camera I repainted some of it with white. I then took a very expensive chrome marker and touched up my buttons and some of the stitching on the lips. Absolutely loving how this looks, I decided to David Blaine this part of the project and magically take felt and nylon and apply it to the inside of the mask and also the eyes to darken them. And just like that, we are at the finish line. I'm going to finish by taking thick elastic wrap and glue it to the inside of the mask. I will then take thinner strips of elastic to hold that elastic in place, and then once everything is dried, well, I think it's time for a test drive. I had so much fun with today's project, and I hope you all enjoyed it as well. If you did get a chance to enjoy today's project or got any enjoyment out of this at all, feel free to hit the like button for today's video, also subscribe to the channel, and also set bell notifications for future updates. All the support helps, and if you made it this far in the video, I truly appreciate you. I also appreciate those who have been supporting my Patreon this entire year, non-stop, without any little support on my own. I thank you all so much. I will definitely be making up to you here very, very soon. With that said, take care, God bless, and we'll see you next time, guys.